So those are your headlines that we've recapped. We're just going to continue to take a look at some more news that's obviously making headlines here in our own country, looking at the Madlanga Commission, the Ad Hoc Committee's work as well. We unpack quite a highly eventful week that happened at the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry, which heard tense testimony from senior officials and witnesses with dramatic cross-examinations, fresh controversies emerging. Meanwhile, Parliament's Ad Hoc Committee investigating similar allegations, which saw public disagreement, and a high-profile walkout by private investigator Paul O'Sullivan, followed by his recent agreement, of course, to testify before the Judicial Commission. Let's make sense of what really unfolded, what this all means. Advocate Mbalenhle Amanda Mthembu is legal analyst, joins us to weigh in further. Good morning, Advocate Mbalenhle, and thank you for your time at this hour.
Good morning, Liesl. Thank you for having me.
Where do we start? There's a lot that's happened. Perhaps the Madlanga Commission, Linda Gashega, Shadrack Sibiya as well. They've been under intense cross-examination. But if we're looking at what unfolded, what does this then actually tell us about the internal police, the municipal governance structures as well, and really how significant this is all playing out in relation to the broader picture?
You know, I think all of what unfolded this week just speaks to how deeply the corruption goes in our municipal structures. It really is the tip of the iceberg. It shows that there's a lot that still needs to be uncovered. It shows that there really needs to be a system overhaul. There needs to be deeper investigations, deeper treatment of certain actors in terms of misconduct, in terms of disciplinary action, and even criminal prosecution. You know, it just really goes to speak to the depth of the rot in our structures.
Well, if we also turn our attention to a parallel system that was happening, the walking out of Paul O'Sullivan from the Ad Hoc Committee's work, his willingness firstly to testify after refusing to complete that parliamentary testimony. I mean, we need to look at what this walkout could actually mean, how it perhaps alludes to contempt of proceedings in Parliament, how it interplays with his willingness to cooperate with the Commission at large. What's this indicative of as well, this behavior?
You know, so at this particular point, up until his walkout, Paul O'Sullivan's testimony or appearance in front of the Ad Hoc Committee has been voluntary. So at this point, contempt proceedings can't be launched when he appeared before the committee voluntarily. So I think at this point, Parliament needs to issue a subpoena first, and then failure of Paul O'Sullivan to submit to the committee after the subpoena has been issued, and then contempt proceedings be issued after that. So I think up until this point, Parliament has been quite friendly in terms of allowing people to testify, allowing people to voluntarily appear, having not issued subpoenas, having not compelled anyone to testify up until this point. So I think that it really doesn't inspire confidence in the process at this point, and there needs to sort of be tougher action on the part of Parliament to compel individuals to appear to the testimony. I mean, the walkout was shocking, and it just really speaks to the type of witness that Paul O'Sullivan is. It really speaks to how much he undermines the process as well, and really speaks to how at this point he's just sort of been allowed to conduct himself however he pleases.
Yes, and thank you for speaking to that, because we're obviously looking to understand how walkouts, disputes, possible contempt issues, how this affects the public confidence at large of obviously the work of the Ad Hoc Committee as well. So thank you for speaking to that. But if we go back to the Madlanga Commission, Sibiya coming out now, facing intense cross-examination. We saw what unfolded there about his relationships with subordinates, the alleged criminal actors as well, admissions to leaking confidential documents that obviously reached Vusikat Matlala as well. Tell us about the legal significance of such an admission. Does this amount to criminal disclosure, the evidence that's needed perhaps for disciplinary action? Does the NPA come involved? There's a lot of questions here. How would you weigh in?
There's definitely a lot. So at this point, we need to make a distinction between misconduct and criminality. So I think we have enough in terms of the misconduct aspect of it. There definitely needs to be disciplinary action further that's taken, because in his capacity as the deputy commissioner, there needs to be disciplinary action on that. But when it comes to criminality, there are a lot more elements in order to make certain charges stick. So it would really depend on what charges would be leveled against him and whether there is enough evidence to institute those proceedings, which I think there is potential to be able to institute criminal charges. I think that when it comes to disclosure of confidential information, there's various pieces of legislation that prohibit the disclosure of such information. We've got the SABC Act, we've got the Protection of Information Act, we've got the Cyber Crimes Act as well. And all of these pieces of legislation have sections that prohibit the disclosure of secret or confidential police information. So disclosure of that can lead to criminal liability, and in some cases can even lead to imprisonment of up to 3 years. So there is definitely potential for all of this information to be referred to the National Prosecuting Authority and for charges to be leveled against Sabia once further evidence is, of course, unraveled.
Yeah, what about potential contempt or perjury exposure if Sabia's statements actually contradict sworn documentary evidence or earlier testimony as well, obviously, as we know, in the second phase of the Commission's work?
Yes, there's definitely exposure now to perjury as well. If his evidence contradicts earlier sworn documentary evidence. So Sabia needs to be very, very careful on how he proceeds going forward, because contradicting earlier sworn documentary evidence exposes him to perjury, and that could expose him as well to criminal charges being filed against him. And obviously we know that a refusal to give information or a refusal to testify fully and satisfactorily to questions that are lawfully put before him also exposes him to charges as well. So he's in between a rock and a hard place at this point.
Oof. I mean, if we even just turn our attention from Sabia to Gqashega, of course, returning to the witness stand, denying allegations that she shielded officials, including the likes of Julius Mkwanazi. You know, we're obviously looking at the implications there, the implications here, because the Commission has, ordered her to continue and just rejected some postponement requests as well. And so when we're looking at HR decisions when it comes to this, decisions that she made or even decisions that she didn't make, what evidence is at our disposal, perhaps, to look at whether there's collusion? It was just simply, a poor standard of administrative governance or oversight or implementation. What's playing out through her testimony that's unfolded thus far?
Okay, so when it comes to Gqashega, her position is quite interesting because there really is a fine line as well between misconduct, which would be a non-criminal, either intentional or negligent violation of the rules and regulations and policies that she's governed by, to criminality where there was actual knowledge of her actions and direct involvement as well in decisions that obviously influenced the outcome. So at this point, we would need to look at the elements of the charges that would be leveled against her. You know, misconduct and criminality sort of interplay together at this point, and you would really need a piece of evidence that would take her over the line from just misconduct to criminality. So
Yeah.
I think that as well, anything that she says has potential to be investigated further. And if further evidence is found, we already know that misconduct has been committed here, but we need more to take her over the line into criminal liability at this point.
Another aspect, just as we conclude, and it's a twofold question, there were notions of unacceptable sick notes or postponements. The Commission itself criticizing unacceptable medical certificates, which they feel is used to delay testimony, and obviously looking at now rescheduling witnesses alike. Talk to us about the consequences for scheduling at large, the integrity of the testimony, perhaps in relation to who's also set to come for this following week as we wrap up.
It's quite interesting with the medical certificates. You know, you'd think that you'd be able to submit a sick note and miss a day of school, but these are far more serious situations, and a sick note just is not going to cut it. A sick note is not going to enable a witness to just not be able to testify. So at this point, like I stated earlier, it really doesn't inspire confidence in the public. And I think that a very strong message has to be sent to show that this sort of behavior is unacceptable. I think that it's time now to start issuing subpoenas. It's time now to really compel people legally to come forward and testify before the commission. And any sort of failure to appear would then lead to contempt proceedings. I think this playing nice and accepting medical certificates is affecting the integrity of the investigations, and also just affecting the integrity of any evidence that a witness is meant to give. You know, there is a specific order that witnesses are meant to testify in, and it's a risk now if a witness is able to be rescheduled. How are they going to be tailoring their testimony to adjust to what's already been said? It really does. It's affecting everything. It's affecting the integrity of the testimony. It's affecting the proceedings as well, because, like I said, there is a reason why witnesses are ordered to testify the way that they are ordered to testify. So it is time for subpoenas now to be issued and people to be compelled legally.
Well, there are lots of questions, more questions than answers. We're slowly putting the pieces of the puzzle together, but let's leave our conversation there. And thank you for your time for weighing in. Advocate Mbalenhle Amanda Mthembu, legal analyst, weighing in relation to what happened at the Madlanga Commission, the Ad Hoc Committee as well, of course, as that work continues for this coming week. We'll leave that conversation there. Thank you again for joining us.